Yeah, we obviously have a lot to cover this afternoon, including the storms that are moving through North Texas.
But first, breaking news you saw it here on WFAA and special coverage from ABC News. Former President Donald Trump found guilty on all counts in his hush money trial.
Mr. Trump is the first former president to be convicted of a felony, and we're getting all kinds of reaction from officials here in Texas.
But first, ABC's Rena Roy brings us up to speed on what just happened.
Former President Donald Trump found guilty. Jurors delivering the verdict on 34 counts of falsifying business records in the hush money payment to adult film actress Stormy Daniels. Last year, Trump pleaded not guilty to the felony charges brought by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg. The case tied to that $130,000 payment his former attorney Michael Cohen made to Daniels just before the 2016 presidential election in exchange for her silence about her alleged sexual encounter with Trump. Prosecutors saying when Trump reimbursed Cohen, he purposely disguised it as a legal expense to hide the damaging information from voters. Trump denies that encounter with Daniels and maintains he did nothing wrong. The trial began in April, prosecutors calling 20 witnesses to the stand, including Cohen and Daniels, the defense calling 2, Trump declining to testify in his own defense. Rena Roy, ABC News, New York.
Jason Wheeler has been keeping an eye on reaction to this verdict. What are you seeing out there?
Yeah, we've been seeing a lot of social media posts, including from some prominent figures here in Texas, of course. Right after the verdict was read, former President Trump also came out of the courtroom, and he had this to say. Take a listen.
This was a rigged, disgraceful trial. The real verdict is going to be November 5th by the people, and they know what happened here, and everybody knows what happened here.
The former president went on to say that he is innocent. He blamed the Biden administration and the judge trying this case. Of course, the Biden administration does not have control, though, over that local jurisdiction, the DA there in New York, in Manhattan, who brought this case. That is not under federal control, we should mention. Mr. Trump says this is long from over, though. Let's bring it back here to Texas now. Texas Governor Abbott responded on X shortly after the verdict. He said, quote, "This was a sham show trial. The kangaroo court will never stand on appeal." And just a reminder, Governor Abbott was the former Attorney General here in this state, and before that, he was a Supreme Court Justice at the state level here in Texas. That is his reaction today. We also saw a response from Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, who has had his own legal troubles over the years. He calls the trial a sham, saying in part, "As Attorney General of Texas, I will unleash every tool at my disposal to fight this blatant corruption and political persecution spewing from New York and the Biden administration." Not really clear what kind of powers he would have at his disposal to have any effect on this.
No.
And again, the Biden administration does not have control over what the Manhattan DA brings or doesn't bring in a court of law. And one last one that I'll pass along, Senator Ted Cruz, who is running for re-election here in Texas, of course, on the same ballot that President Trump will be on this fall, says this is a dark day for America, uses some of the similar language that we're seeing floating around in Republican circles, saying this entire trial has been a sham, nothing more than a political persecution.
Let's talk about the significance of this moment, Wheeler, because he now becomes the first American president to be declared a felon.
Yeah, it is historic, and you got the feeling of that gravity as these verdicts were being read. We couldn't obviously hear or see what was happening in that court, but as it was being passed along on TV, I think everyone sort of stopped what they were doing, and not just because we're in the news business. I was getting texts from people who don't normally text me about these sorts of things, and they were just trying to take in the gravity of it, and they also had questions about it. I think a lot of people maybe haven't been following the ins and outs of this trial, and just today they see big breaking news and it captures their attention, maybe for the first time since the trial began.
And the Constitution doesn't mention anything about a criminal conviction preventing someone from running for president.
It doesn't. It's almost as though they didn't consider these kinds of possibilities, or maybe they did consider it and they thought, well, that'll work itself out. One thing that we talked about, a lot of people have been asking the question, well, does this prevent him from running for office? It does not prevent former President Trump from running for office. It does not prevent him from serving in office if he is elected too. So nothing changes on that political front.
All right, thank you, Jason. The sentencing hearing for the former president will be on July 11th. That's 4 days before the Republican National Convention. More on this breaking story ahead on World News Tonight at 5:30, and we'll have more reaction from here in Texas on WFAA at 6.